Yes, people, welcome back. Frankly, I got fucking bored of posting the same fitness shit. So I thought we'd do something different today. Something focusing on Pep Guardiola and when he was caught juicing or doing steroids at Brescia during his playing career, specifically Nandralone. In 2001. So Pep Guardiola moved from Barcelona to Brescia in Italy to replace the one and only Andrea Pirlo. Brescia actually had a pretty sick team at the time, which is quite interesting. Yeah, and he tested positive twice for the anabolic steroid Nandralone. Around a similar period, actually, two other players of note tested positive for the same steroid Nandralone, and that was Edgar Davids and Jaap Stam. So interestingly enough, the current Bayern doctor, the only one who's known for fucking juicing up and getting his players hench as fuck, rapid as fuck, has said there's no doping in football, which to me sounds like a very, very broad statement, seeing as there's like 140,000 active professional players. It's a bit of a reach to say no one is doping in football, and it's quite coincidental. It's the guy who's getting people massive who's saying there's no doping. Oh well, moving on. So why would you as a footballer or any athlete look to take anabolic steroids? Well, they increase muscle mass, they reduce body fat, they increase recovery capacity, reduce recovery time, and therefore increase your readiness to play football. Just makes sense, doesn't it? Another thing that is used for doping is something called EPO or erythropoietin, if that's the pronunciation of it. But this is basically used to increase red blood cell count, which increases the oxygen delivery to the muscle, which helps short carbohydrates, turn it into ATP, which is used for energy, and then that recycling of ATP and use of ATP can aid in basically keeping you more energized during long distance events. When we see EPO doping, it is typically in long distance events such as marathon runners and in race. Similarly, naturally, we see endurance athletes such as cyclists go into hypoxic zones where there is a lack of oxygen supply, and train in these environments in order to facilitate an adaptation by their body to increase red blood cell count and therefore increase oxygen carrying supply to improve race performance and endurance. So basically there's a clear benefit here for why anyone would want to improve their red blood cell count and EPO. So one of the questions would be for Pep, well, if he's taking steroids, why isn't he fucking massive? Well, the thing is, whilst an increase in testosterone from Nandralone does somewhat increase muscle mass, there has to be a specificity of training to facilitate hypertrophy or increase muscle gain for the most part. So you basically have to train to increase muscle mass, which a lot of these footballers tend not to do in terms of hypertrophy for the most part during the season. So why was the choice of steroid Nandralone specifically? Well, Nandralone has been notoriously used or talked about in steroid forums as something that is very good for soft tissue injury, but it is also backed up by science and scientific papers. Well, we're going to talk through a few quotes specifically from the literature, scientific literature, that prove why Nandralone was the steroid of choice for Pep Guardiola. In one study, we have the quote, "Nandralone is a particularly compelling medication that has significant benefits on joint pain." So as a footballer, if you've got a lot of joint pain, why would you not? Similarly, we have another quote, "Nandralone achieved similar results of recombinant EPO," so basically supplemental EPO, but for cheaper. And androgens have an appreciable anabolic effect. So Nandralone is cheaper than supplementing with EPO, and it has an anabolic effect which increases recovery capacity. So it just makes sense. Nandralone achieved similar results of recombinant EPO, so basically supplemental EPO, but for cheaper. And androgens have an appreciable anabolic effect. So Nandralone is cheaper than supplementing with EPO, and it has an anabolic effect which increases recovery capacity. So it just makes sense. Finally, we have Nandralone is the androgen of choice for treating anemia. So anemia is basically the lack of enough red blood cells to carry oxygen to the body's tissues. So Nandralone is the androgen of choice for treating anemia because it has the best EPO to androgen ratio, meaning for each milligram that you dose of Nandralone, you get the best ratio of EPO, or best upregulation of EPO and red blood cell count. So increased oxygen carrying capacity and increased cardiovascular capacity and increased endurance. And especially for someone who's a defensive midfielder who has to run around quite a bit, you would want them not getting too tired. So yeah, similarly, we have increased intestinal absorption of calcium and bone mineral content, increased collagen synthesis also, which is what muscle and the tissue structure surrounding joints is made from. All points to why Pep Guardiola was a little juicy. I hope it was interesting and something different. Let me know if you enjoyed it. Drop a like if you can spare one. Hope you're fantastic, hope you're well. Bye.